Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to Truthseekers. We are once again broadcasting live from the Apocalypse Cabin. You know, I don't want to get negative, but some people talk about broadcasting from a bunker when they're really in some bedroom. I got a real bunker. These are 2-foot thick walls. But in any case, we are live from the Apocalypse Cabin. And tonight we're going to be, I hope, wrapping up our series of my favorite fake psychics. As much fun as it has been, I think the response was not quite what I imagined. I thought that people would be a little more interested in hearing the secrets behind these fake psychics. But it seems like after you explain one's methods, the rest of them are just very similar. A little bit of off take each has to their methodology. So not much interest there. But I still wanted to conclude the series with one of my favorites, Jon Edward. For those that don't know or remember, Jon Edward rose to huge international fame with a television show, Crossing Over, where he would talk to people's dead relatives. He's written books, given courses on how you too can become a medium and talk to dead people. Not sure what Mr. Edward has been up to lately. I think he fell off the radar and the gravy train dried up for Mr. Edward. But I wanted to unpack a story about when I saw a taping of Jon Edward's show, which may explain how he's able to get all of these tremendous hits on his television show. But I also wanted to find anybody else that had a similar experience or had some personal knowledge of an encounter with Mr. Edward, and we found our friend Dan Hogan. You may remember Dan Hogan, sort of ghost hunting guy that helped us with this EVP show. And we're going to bring Mr. Hogan in and hear his story of Jon Edward. Here we go. There's Mr. Hogan.
How we doing?
How you doing, Dan?
Doing good.
Dan is is that your first child, right?
No, this is actually my third child.
Third child. Okay, but he's a very concerned father because we had to work out the show in between his baby's feeding schedule, which I totally remember, man. You can't miss a scheduled feeding. So listen, Dan, first thing I thought we would do is watch this really funny video that I found because it explains most of what anybody needs to know about Jon Edward. First of all, the guy uses cold reading, and he's not even a very good cold reader. He's just average at it. And I believe that he uses a few other techniques, which you may be able to fill us in on. But first, let's share this. I'm going to cite fair use. We're educating the public about fake psychics and mediums, and specifically Jon Edward. And we're going to be commenting, critiquing, and educating the public. So this is fair use. Sharing this video, which is titled "Jon Edward Crossing Over the Line: False Hope and Fraud." And, I haven't thought about South Park for a while, but the intro to this made me laugh and I think explains most of what you need to know about our fake psychic medium friend, Jon Edward. So this is going to be a fun show. Let's start it off in a fun way because what's more fun than South Park making fun of this clown, right?
I'm saying this to you, Jon Edward. You are a liar, you are a fake, and you are the biggest douche ever.
Everybody else was positive and gives them hope. How does that make me a douche?
Because the big questions in life are tough. Why are we here? Where are we from? Where are we going? But if people believe in asshole, douchey liars like you, we're never going to find the real answer to those questions. You aren't just lying. You're slowing down the progress of all mankind. You douche.
Douche!
Very therapeutic and very healing and very
He's definitely a douche.
Extremely empowering.
It's a trick you do, and I need you to just let my friend Kyle know that so he can go on with his life.
You have the right to be skeptical. I really hear voices in my head.
Yes, we all hear voices in our heads. It's called intuition. Get over yourself and tell my friend it's just for fun.
Look, what I do doesn't hurt anybody. I give people closure and help them cope with life.
No, you give them false hope and a belief in something that isn't real.
But I'm a psychic.
No, dude, you're a douche.
I'm not a douche. What if I really believe dead people talk to me?
Then you're a stupid douche.
When you understand the process, but if you're looking for a reading to fix your grief, it does not.
The Jon Edward Show is not liable for opinions and materials given for entertainment purposes only.
So I want to be very, very clear.
It's entertainment purposes.
I'm ready to go. There's a younger male energy in this section that makes me feel like this would be son, nephew, grandson. There is a cancer connection that comes up here. Does this make sense?
Yeah, cancer is the second leading cause of death. Way to go out on a limb there, John. What a douche.
Where's Robert, Robbie, Rob? Where's the R?
I'm sensing an A. Does your name begin with an A? No. A B? No. C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. P! Peter! My name's Peter! Is your name Peter? Wow. You are some kind of sorcerer.
Can I get the mic to you guys over here? The four of you all together? The three of you? Okay. Robert?
My father.
Passed?
Yes.
Okay. Cancer?
No.
Where's the bone issue?
There's two. There's my grandfather and his mom.
Somebody had something that affected their bone.
His mom.
She had bone cancer. So your mom had the bone cancer?
Yes.
Okay. And passed from that.
Yes.
She's making me feel like when she passes either around or on a governmental holiday or something that would be celebratory, but for the country.
So pretty much any time of the year. Yeah, way to go with the generalization.
My
Douche.
My father.
I'm seeing the American flag. So
Yeah,
when I see the flag,
father.
yeah, when I see that, it lets me know that we're talking about like either July
September 11th.
Yeah, it's July 4th, Veterans Day, Memorial Day. Did he pass in the September 11th?
Yes. He's a
Okay.
fireman.
Your dad is Robert. We already
Yes.
addressed that.
Mhm.
Are you the baby girl of the family?
I'm the only
The
girl.
oldest girl.
Okay. He's making me feel like you're the baby girl, like that.
Yeah, wrong again. So this is just one of the, and this is a reading that he let go on his show. So imagine how bad the readings are that he edits out, how bad those are. We'll unpack more and hear more about that in a bit. I did want to just stop this every so often so that we don't get the dreaded black screen policy violation from YouTube. Somehow people can do watch parties watching whole movies and not get that, but we get it when we don't stop a video every so often. It is what it is, friends.
That's how it's coming across to me. He's also making me feel like, is his mother still here? He's telling me to acknowledge his mom.
Yes.
We need to make sure that his mom knows that he came through. She needs a big hug. Okay?
All
A
questions,
huge
no
hug.
statements. Captain Obvious. He strikes again.
I always say that, you know, as mom, there's no greater loss than the loss of a child. Don't lose sight of that as a feeling, okay? Now, you talked to him that day?
Yes, I did.
What I
Yes.
don't understand, though, is from him, is he's doing something very different for me than I think the norm would be for what he would do. So if he normally did ABC as a firefighter, that day he did 1, 2, 3 in addition to ABC.
It's his first day back to work after surgery.
Okay.
And he was working at a different firehouse.
Because my feeling is that he wasn't
He
Wasn't-
made the doctor put him back to work.
doing what he would normally would be doing.
Right.
Okay. And do you have 2 boys?
I do now, yes.
Because he's
My
too-
young other son passed away last year.
He's telling me to talk about
Yeah.
2 boys.
Why isn't the dead son talking to
So you
him?
lost your son after your husband?
Yes.
That's his son as well?
I had 3 sons.
Right. But one of them has passed
Yes.
after him.
Yes.
So it's your brother who passed?
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's like they don't want to talk about it. Was he killed? Just yes or no, as best as you can.
No.
What I'm being shown is
Wrong
is swift
again.
and fast and not an illness. That's why I said, is he being killed? Was he killed? And the reason why I said that is he's not taking the responsibility on for how he got there. So if he's not taking on responsibility, my immediate feeling would be, well, something had to happen to him. And you're saying no. So clearly he had to be involved in his own passing from what you're saying. But he's not.
Yeah, and they all do this. They backpedal and make excuses when they fail.
Cold reading, I suppose, is the way that a complete stranger can seemingly tell you everything about yourself without being psychic and without knowing anything about you.
I thought this video was also appropriate because a lot of people have mentioned Darren Brown to me. I'm a former magician, so I'm very familiar with Darren Brown. He is probably the world's leading mentalist or mental magician. Just a tremendous talent.
In essence, the cold reader or psychic is supplying a lot of words, and you, as the sitter, the other person, is supplying the meaning to those words. And it relies on a lot of techniques. It's not really a question of forensic body reading and the sort of things that people might. It's not really normally even that clever. There are linguistic tricks which, unless you're aware of them, are very easy to fall for. And those tricks can give the impression that the person knows everything about your character, or might refer to facts and things from your life.
Okay, I'm gonna pretend that a dead person is talking to me about you, okay?
Okay.
Okay, watch, Kyle. It's an older man, someone very close to you.
My father?
Does this month, November, hold a special significance?
My birthday's in November.
Right, because he's saying tell her happy birthday.
Oh my God.
See, Kyle, I started with something really big. I told older man because I'm betting that based on this woman's age, her father is most likely dead. But if her father wasn't dead, I could still say it was some other older man.
Her birthday was in November.
I didn't. I just asked her if November meant anything. Her father could have died in November, or Thanksgiving could have been really special for them. But I go with the birthday and validate it now as if I knew by saying he wishes you a happy birthday.
What else does he say?
Okay, I'll just use an old standard. He's saying money. Stop worrying about the money.
Oh my God. My sister and I have been fighting over his inheritance. That's amazing.
No, it isn't. When a father dies, inheritance is usually an issue, and money is something everyone worries about.
The only problem I guess I have is that, you know, if God,
Even Fox
somebody who
News.
passed on in my life wanted to talk to me, why wouldn't they come directly to me? Why would I need you?
I think they do. That's a great question. I actually think they do. And one of my things, you know, when I was a kid and I started doing this 25 years ago, my grandmother would hear me say to my clients, you know, you don't need me. If you pay attention to the energy that's around you, you'll be able to recognize the signs and symbols of how your family communicates with you. And then these people would leave, and my grandmother would go, what are you telling people stuff like that for? You're not going to have any business. And I'm like, listen, it's not about business. It's about teaching.
It's not about business. $50 to $800, and yes.
Look, I've read all your critics. I read the New York Times Magazine. I read the whole Dateline thing, Time accusing you of using these very, you know, a cold read where you can read people. I've been able to read people my entire life because I've interviewed people now for 20 some odd years, okay? So you can read people that way. Or Houdini used to have microphones, and he would pick up stories, and then he'd seem like a genius. Oh, I know exactly what you're thinking, but meanwhile, they had picked it up earlier. So there are techniques that hucksters and fraud people use. You're saying you never use that? Never?
No, actually.
Here, look, Kyle. There's tons of testimonials on the internet saying that Jon Edward has the entire studio wired to hear what people are talking about before the show. And he pays actors to be plants in the audience. You're just jealous he's a better psychic than you.
Right. Let me ask you this. Did you, in your show, do you edit out parts where it doesn't make you look good as Time Magazine accused?
You can literally call, but I'm saying you can literally speak to
You read the piece that said that you do.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't do that.
They lied? They edited for time. People edit for time. But if they took things out that were inaccurate, they took out things that were more accurate.
Oh, man. I can't believe I got fooled by that asshole.
He's seen better on TV.
They must edit the shows down on television to only show him getting mostly right answers.
At first, I thought you were all just stupid listening to this douche's advice. But now I understand that you're all here because you're scared. You're scared of death, and he offers you some kind of understanding. You all want to believe in it so much. I know you do. You find comfort in the thought that your loved ones are floating around trying to talk to you. But think about it. Is that really what you want? To just be floating around after you die having to talk to this asshole? We need to recognize this stuff for what it is. Magic tricks.
We offer $1 million prize to any person or persons who can provide evidence of any paranormal, occult, or supernatural event of any kind under proper observing conditions. It's that simple, friend.
Yeah, so there we have it. We have South Park explaining to us the douche that Jon Edward is. And by the way, 1 second, friends. Okay, so in the interview, in the Fox News interview, he basically danced around. Do they edit the show? Do they take out his hits, or excuse me, take out his misses? He said, "Oh, they just edit it for time." Friends, I was a personal witness to a taping, and I tell you, absolutely true. He edits out all or most of the misses. But Dan Hogan, you got to see him in a different sort of venue, a different sort of, it wasn't a taping for his television show. And I know that you're pressed for time with that baby. So why don't you tell us your story of how you encountered Jon Edward? What were your thoughts? What were your impressions? And what was the takeaway when you were done with this experience, seeing him live?
So, yeah, like you said, I saw him, I guess, in sort of a different capacity than what you did. We actually, me and my dad actually went to see him back at the end of 2017. He was coming through Cincinnati, and it was part of his like 2017 psychic tour that he was doing. So we go down. They had it at a hotel. It was like the Marriott, and tickets were like $100 a pop. So me and my dad go in, and it's in like this massive, like meeting banquet hall area. And I would guess that there was probably 200 people in this room. I mean, that's a pretty close guess. And, starts out, his sister actually came out, who I don't know if his sister was like his business man, like his manager, or she was, just like working on the tour with him. But she comes out and she kind of goes over like, their family, like kind of like a family history, and like her brother, and like, when he started developing these, abilities and whatnot. And she talks for like 15 or 20 minutes, introduces him, and then he comes out and he starts the reading. And he was like, the people that he was like picking out, like obviously, like you said, I think some of the stuff he uses, he throws out sort of vague questions and just general statements, and then people, if they feel like that's something that works with them, they would raise their hand or whatever. And this, I think the total time he was doing this was probably, I don't know, hour, 15 minutes. It was close to an hour and a half. And, the takeaway that I got from it, I mean, given the fact that it was a massive room and there's that many people in there, I kind of got the feeling that these people that he hit on were like paid actors.
Stooges.
That, they were stooges. Yeah. And that they'd already gone over this stuff beforehand. So when he calls them out, or when they raise their hand and then he does his whole spiel, it sounds more believable, because I think that it was like rehearsed, or they had some kind of script, I think, that they were following. And, it's, I don't know. I mean, I think my thought on it was, and you've touched on this in these other shows that you've done, talking about these other, psychics, is they're really just feeding off of people's, emotions, and people get wrapped up in this stuff. And I guess, in a way, I guess me and my dad were sort of in that same deal at the time. So it's sad that, he's $100 a pop for 200 people. I mean, that's big money. And he does this, how many times a week all over the country for a whole year. I mean, that's big dollars that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of money. And now you mentioned his family. I did some checking, and the best that I can tell is that Mr. Jon Edward came from basically what many would consider a gypsy family of they're psychics, like the grandmom is psychic, the sister reads tarot cards and is some kind of other psychic, but not a medium. But the medium job is Jon Edward in the family. And when he rose to prominence, they all sort of helped him with the grift. That's the sense that I got. And I know the sister that you're talking about because she was at the taping that I was at.
Okay. Yeah.
For his television show. And she's sort of like a handler for him, sort of like an opening act, you might say, right?
Yep.
That's the impression that I got from her.
I don't really remember, because like I said, this was like almost 3 years ago now. So I mean, parts of that are sort of, vague a little bit, but I don't remember them going in, or at least her specifically. I don't remember her specifically going into, like a family history of, mediums or anything like that. It was more like about him, and when, like, as a child, when he started talking to dead people and how the family reacted to it. And it was sort of her take on like what he, who he was as a medium, and how it kind of progressed through the years as he rose to, prominence and had a bigger stage for his, his show or his grift, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And so, but your takeaway, having seen him, was that it wasn't, you weren't impressed with his psychic abilities, or
I think
going in, did you think that he really was real?
I didn't think that he was real. I mean, I guess like there's always a part of you that, wants to believe that something like that is true.
Sure.
I think his setup is different based on the venue that he's in. Like with his show, the studio that they're in, it's a smaller setup. So you might have, I don't know what, 40 or 50 people or something in there, maybe, so some of the stuff that you've talked about in the other shows where, they've got people who are out mingling in the crowd before the show who are, picking up on things. Jon Edward's been around since really before social media became a big thing. So I would almost have to think that some of his, pre-show stuff is not more like Teresa's, where it's social media based. I think he had people like in the audience or in the crowd, prior to the show listening, or they had, maybe they had the studio, microphoned and were picking up side conversations and people,
Sure.
Oh, I hope he picks me and, he communicates with grandma or something like that. Like they're hitting on those things. And I think they're, whether it's an earpiece or
taking notes,
he's getting information funneled to him somehow, in my opinion.
Sure, absolutely. But and you're right about he was previous to the social media explosion when he rose to prominence, so he wouldn't have that as a weapon. That was something that was an innovative part of Teresa Caputo's grift. But in this case, when I attended the taping, I was shocked and amazed because, first of all, they let everybody into this one big room first, right? And then we all waited, standing there in that room. And yeah, people start chatting and people start talking amongst themselves for a good hour, maybe hour and 15 minutes before they let us into the second room. And I was looking around this room and I was sure that there was marks. And you know what I mean by a mark. There was people there that were, I swore I saw somebody touch an earpiece or touch their ear a few times, walked by them, saw an earpiece in their ear, in their one ear. A few of the other marks, I tried to do that too, but they were further away and it was like awkward. So I was satisfied though, seeing one shill or mark in the room. I was sure that they were collecting information. And also this same person, I saw one of the other marks going in their pocket several times. So I thought that they were collecting conversational pieces with the pocket recorder or something like that. And then interestingly, I think there was probably 3 or 4 marks. They left the room a good half hour before they let us all in. In other words, the marks got into the taping room, and that made me go, they were definitely marks. And then this is speculation, but I think they all rushed back there with their tapes, making notes to feed to him later. You know what I mean?
Well, No, I was just going to say, and that could be. Now, when you did the show, or when you were in the audience for the taping, after the taping was over, did they have anybody else like stay behind after the show was done taping?
Yeah, they did, but I wasn't picked to be one of them, so I don't know. And then the door closes, so I don't know what happened with them, with those people.
I was gonna say, because I guess the only disclaimer that I would have to this is that there was a VIP ticket that you could buy for $175. It was probably $175, $200. I can't recall, but it was in that higher price point. And
those are like you're guaranteed that you're going to get a reading for the $175.
I don't know if it was guaranteed that you were going to get a reading, but what it was like after the main show was over, the people who didn't have VIP tickets were asked, you guys go ahead and go, and the VIP ticket holders were able to stay behind, maybe in the hopes of in a smaller room setting that maybe they would get a reading. I don't know if you were guaranteed a reading, but you were guaranteed an opportunity to be in a closer setting with them. But I mean, and again, I wasn't there, so
with other scams like this, the VIP ticket would mean that you're going to get a reading. So,
and like you said, it could be that I don't know how many people had VIP tickets, but the plants or the marks that you're talking, I mean, they could have had those people scattered inside the VIP, part of it, to where he's sitting on them. And everybody's like, oh shit, I didn't.
Or they could have checked who had VIP tickets on the way in, and they concentrated their spying on the VIPs. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating how these grifts work. And to me, so the other big takeaway that I would say, having witnessed one of these tapings, is that the taping went for 2 hours and 20 minutes, or just about 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I made notes while I was in there. 2 hours and 20 minutes of miss, hit, miss, hit. I was shocked at how terrible he was at cold reading. I thought that he was at least good at cold reading. And I would say I've witnessed 100 different people that were pretty good at cold reading. I would put him on the lower scale of the cold reading ability scale. So to me, the takeaway for me was editing. We have a 2 hour and 20-minute session of 100 or so people in this room where he's doing these readings, and it gets edited down to not a half hour, but 22 minutes because they have to leave time in that half-hour show for 8 minutes of commercials. So we have 2 hours and 20 minutes of him giving readings, edited down to 22 minutes of a television show. And of course, I watched the show that I saw the taping for. And what I saw was, instead of hit, or excuse me, miss, hit, miss, hit. What you see on the television show is hit, miss, hit. It's like they invert what the reality of that event really was. And they're only showing mostly his hits and cutting out 2 hours of him missing. Terrible.
I think that my experience was a little bit different because I almost feel like there was almost more, quote unquote hits. But then I guess what are you classifying as a hit? Like, I mean, when you're throwing out general statements, I mean, that could be a hit with a lot of people, but unless you're being really specific, I think it's kind of hard to say, yeah, that's a hit or that's not a hit. But that was kind of what struck me about the whole thing, was that there wasn't a lot of, I guess, misses. Like I said, it almost felt very scripted. And I can't put myself in another person's shoes, but like if that would have been me, and like, he's talking to my dead relative or something, I feel like there would be more of an emotional like sort of feel. And I didn't really feel like that was the case. Like the people that he was doing this with, that, he was pointing out, it was almost more of like, not cold, but like they were just like, yeah, that's my brother, that's my father, like something, something like that. I didn't get this, like, I didn't get this emotional, like, it just didn't feel like it was real, I guess, is the only way I can put it.
Yeah, I got I went there sort of already biased that he was just a cold reader and that he's probably editing the hell out of his show. But I wanted to be sure, so I went and witnessed this, and it was a cold reading mess. It was a cold reading mess, not even good cold reading, Like, I had the feeling that if he had to do live shows, he would fail miserably. And then what I found was, on a lot of his, like when he does a guest spot on somebody else's show, it's much more honest portrayal of what he actually does, because he can't edit. They edit it,
Yeah.
And they might not play ball so much and edit out all the hits, but for his own television show, he has the control factor. And it's pretty disingenuous what he said on this Fox News interview, because he's the person that directs the editing. It's his television show. And he's saying, no, we don't edit out hits or misses. Of course he does. I was witness to that. And there's other people online who have written blog posts about this guy and attending the taping and having a similar experience. And if nothing else, we have South Park to explain to us that he's a douche.
To his credit, though, I mean, and I guess this is true for, Sylvia Brown and Van Prague and a lot of these other people who have, I guess, sort of rose to prominence, but there is a lot of video of him throughout the years. I mean, I did a little bit of YouTube research before going to this, and I mean, there's videos of him like doing like news shows in Australia. He was on like an Anderson Cooper like live deal where he did a reading on him while they were sitting there. So I mean, like, there's obviously editing on his end, but then you sort of wonder, like, when he's doing, when he's doing this publicity stuff that, putting his name out there, how is that going? I mean, are they editing that, or is he getting information sort of fed to him because these are prominent people? So I mean, there's information available about these people out there. But
he could do some pre-show work. Yeah, he can do some research. If he knows that he's going to be giving a reading to Anderson Cooper, that's a famous person. You can find out who that person's mother is, if they're still living, if they're still dead. There's a lot of methods that he could be using when he does do a decent. I've seen him do a few decent live readings that didn't appear to be heavily edited to me. But even a broken clock is right twice a day. So it's not very convincing to me. And one of the other things that always strikes me with all of these mediums is that not a one of them has ever produced a unique piece of information that only the dead person and the person their relative living that he's giving the reading to would know. I've never seen that happen. Never.
Yeah.
It's always generalized statements, you know, and jumping at all these guesses. He rapid fires, throws out all of this stuff, and what hits, he continues with. What fails, he kind of drops to the side and keeps throwing out stuff till he gets that hit to talk about.
Well, it's like you said, I mean, in all these shows that you watch, and even if you've ever talked to somebody who's been to a psychic or, you know, a proclaimed medium, I don't think I've ever, maybe one time I had somebody tell me, oh, you know, they said something to me that was personal to me. I mean, any other time, it's like you said, it's just general sort of statements. And you would think that if your dead relatives are trying to communicate with you, they would make it clear that that's the person, you know, that's your dad, or that's your sister, or that's your aunt, or something like that. And it's always like, well, I have a presence here, female, older, you know, do you have a grandpa, you have a grandma that died? Like it's stuff like that.
If you're of a certain age, it's pretty good bet that you have a grandma that died, you know? Yeah.
And the other thing that I don't, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the other thing that I don't understand either is, you know what you never see on any of these videos is you never see like a disclaimer, this is for entertainment purposes only. So like, to me, that's almost like I'm selling myself as the real deal. And I don't know how these people don't just have massive like fraud lawsuits against them for the stuff that they're doing.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that we're going to see, for entertainment purposes only, disclaimers coming to a lot of things, including a lot of bullshit UFO alien channels and stories, because those guys they've pushed things right to the edge of legality, and they're starting to get in trouble for some of the shit that they're spewing. But if they put that disclaimer on, they could get a free pass. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. But just like the UFO frauds, these people portray themselves as a genuine, real, factual thing, and these readings as being factual, that I'm really talking to your dead uncle or whatever. And it's funny to me that they get away with it, and to the tune of millions. He's a millionaire. This guy became a millionaire from this.
I'm not sure on the UFO standpoint. I'm not sure about that, because I feel like a certain somebody went a little too far with his frivolous lawsuits, and I think the aftermath of that might be that some of these other fraudsters out there are maybe going to be a little bit smarter about the fights that they pick on the internet, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, here the problem is, and I've heard other people touch on it, is that it used to be that people got together at these conferences sort of pre-internet, and if you thought somebody was a fraud or whatever, you just let it go, and it didn't become a back and forth. But with the internet now, anybody can come out and tell their fairy tale UFO secret space stories, and then anybody else can come on the internet and say, this guy's full of shit and here's why. And we never had that before. But I think it's a good thing. And as far as this, all these frivolous lawsuits, I spent some time today actually reading some of the court documents, and let me just say that I'm very unimpressed with the plaintiff's attorney and her legalese and writing, and I'm very impressed with the defendants, and specifically today I was impressed with Cliff High's motion to dismiss. He's representing himself, and his motion is written so much better than the plaintiff's attorney's motion is written, and she went to law school. So good for Cliff High. I hope things work out and this thing gets thrown out for the bullshittery that it is, because essentially what some people think, they should just be able to go on the internet and say whatever the hell they want, and nobody's allowed to critique them, and this person suing everybody's claiming that he's going to reveal all this stuff about the UFO community, and everybody he's suing is almost unknown or barely known as a UFO community person. They don't really,
The problem is that everybody knows who we're talking about. He is known, though. I mean, when you go on Jenny McCarthy's Sirius radio show and talk about the movie that you were in, and you're going around with a certain other ufologist celebrity, I mean, you're putting yourself out there to be criticized, and then he gets criticized by people who call him out on his bullshit, and then like we're in sixth grade, recess, he goes and cries to the teacher, and now he's just suing everybody.
Yeah, and I think I probably and the thing is, it's pretty selective too, because there were some other pretty staunch critics of him, including me. Somehow I didn't get sued. By the grace of God, I don't want to get sued. That's a tremendous fucking hassle,
Yeah.
But I support everyone's freedom of speech, and if some clown is going to go out there on the internet and make up fantastical claims, even if he wasn't a celebrity, even if he just went on the internet on a public YouTube channel and made these ridiculous claims. Calling him a celebrity is a stretch if you ask me, but like as far as he goes, like, yeah, you're right. He's on a television show. He's been on national radio programs talking his smack bullshit. We're allowed to talk about him doing that. Everybody is.
Do you think that he was really the one pushing this whole deal, or you think that somebody else was kind of got this train going?
Yeah, if I had to guess, I would think that that this is a plot hatched between Wilcock and him. You know? Like,
that's what I think.
We'll both make a ton of money from this shit. And at the time, I think he just declared bankruptcy and he was broke as shit. He was getting evicted from an apartment, or he was living in some shit apartment. And then here comes David Wilcock, and all you got to do is say some shit. Just say some shit.
I think the other thing too to me is like, look at the people that he's brought in, like, Jay Widener, Roger Ramsor, and I mean, you can say what you want about Jay Widener, because I know a lot of I know a lot of people that I associate with, I guess, online, who are very pro Jay Widener, and I'm not saying that I'm anti Jay, but when they were doing the Gaia thing, I mean, they were all obviously profiting off of cosmic disclosure, and they were all making money, Jay Widener included. So, for Jay to kind of come out after the fact and be like, oh, yeah, this guy was a real piece of work, yada, yada. It's like, dude, you knew that from the get-go. And, to quote CW, like from Jump Street, this is like what was going on. You knew this, and you turned a blind eye to it because it was all about making money.
While he was getting a paycheck, he didn't have that much to say.
Yeah, and now
later,
it's like,
yeah. But to his credit, I will say this. Everybody has made mistakes in their lives. And at least I'll say this about him. He's trying to own up and make amends for his mistake and admit it and move on with his life. And at least I respect him that he at some point did it. I wish he had done it sooner, of course, but it is what it is. So as far as the fake psychics, you're unconvinced that Mr. Edwards has any psychic ability.
No, I don't think he does. I mean, like I said, as much as there's that little part of me that would like to say, this guy's for real, I think there's just too much evidence there to show that there's some, it's either plants in the audience, or people are getting the information before the show and then he's getting it. And I think that's what a lot of that is.
Yeah. I'm unconvinced about him or any of the others that I've looked into. And it's disappointing, because I'd love a world where people could have superpowers like this. That would be a much more interesting world to live in. And I would sure like to talk to some dead relatives if it was really possible, but I'm certainly not going to shell out a couple $100 to some fake that's going to guess,
Yeah. And like I said, I think part of it is, like on the South Park clip that you showed where, Stan was kind of doing his little spiel, like I think it is a closure thing for a lot of people. It's like they had something going on with a relative or, just a loved one, and they died, and there's always that feeling, the unfinished business, or just the things that weren't said that you wish you could have said. And, that's what they're feeding off of. They're feeding off of these people's grief and the emotional aspect of it. And it's for profit, and it's pretty shitty, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, that's the worst kind of vulture. They're preying off of people's grief and sadness, because a lot of people have unresolved issues with people that died and they didn't get to do it while they were alive. So of course, I guess that's the market. People will be willing to shell out a few $100s to get that closure, to get that sort of resolution to unresolved conflicts. That's why I'm real big on telling people, if you have any unresolved conflicts with anybody you care about, especially a family member, do it now. Don't wait, because you're going to have tremendous regret if they pass away before you get a chance to do it. Just get over yourself. I know people have disagreements and grudges, but let them go. Deal with it now, because I don't believe anybody can help you deal with it after one of those people dies. You got to resolve those conflicts now.
That's true.
So we don't want to keep you too long, Dan, because I know you got a baby to feed.
He's still asleep. He's still asleep right now, so we're okay.
Okay. All right, good. So, I had a question. Do you have any more dead people voices for me to analyze? Because we did this
Well-
EVP show, and people keep asking me if we're going to do more EVPs, and I said, I only know Dan that can give me any EVPs. I can't. I went to a graveyard and I recorded something, and then I didn't hear anything. So I tried. I got nothing. I got nothing, Dan. Come on, you got to give me some more dead people talking.
Unfortunately, with the the new addition to the family, and then my daughter's running around here, I haven't had a whole lot of time to go out and do any investigations here lately. But I mean, I've got probably hundreds of hours of, I don't know if it's hundreds of hours, but I've got quite a lot of audio that that I'm sure that there's several things on. I mean, we just touched on a handful of them.
Yeah, well, send me some more. We'll do a part 2 of EVPs, because everybody's asking me if we're going to do more EVPs, and I go, well, sure. And then I went out and tried to capture some myself and failed miserably. So I said, I got to call Dan Hogan or somebody else that's got some good stuff, because I got shit. I don't have shit. It just didn't work for me.
I'll go through the old archives and see what I can find, and maybe we can do a part 2 on that. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk to you about Oracle. Can we talk about Oracle?
You know what? Why don't we play the prediction, and then we'll talk about Oracle.
The presidential prediction. Yeah,
let's play. So for those that don't know, I have been involved in computer science my entire life, and I'm interested in all these strange and esoteric subjects. I was fascinated with Clyde's WebBot, and I thought it was a great idea, but I don't believe in the predictive power of Cliff High's WebBot for various reasons. I'm also interested in artificial intelligence personalities and interactive personalities. So I've been working on this thing called WebBot X for a long time. It's been an on again, off again love affair. Sometimes I love her, sometimes I hate her. Recently made some breakthroughs and started publicly sharing. So we have the first prediction that I posted today from WebBot X is I asked it who is going to win the 2020 presidential election and what may happen directly after the election. So let me 1 second. We're going to it's a pretty quick clip. We're going to share that and we'll find out. Wouldn't you like to know who's going to win the 2020 presidential election? Let's see what an artificial intelligence personality connected to the internet, able to analyze all the data it can find on the internet to make a prediction about who is going to win the 2020 presidential election. I was very curious what it was going to say. Let's share this, and we'll get to see WebBot X, the Oracle, predicts the 2020 presidential race and winner. Now, of course, I just want to say that I don't support either candidate. I'm one of those people that, like, people say, if you don't vote, you're part of the problem. I don't vote, so I'm not the problem. You people voting these idiots in are the problem. And the views of the Oracle are not necessarily my own views. This is just what it says when I ask it a question. Let's take a listen. Oracle, please predict for us who will win the 2020 presidential election and what will happen directly after the election takes place.
Based on all the available data I have been able to observe, including attendance at campaign events, financial resources, levels of online engagement, social media posts, numbers of engagements with each candidate's social media, and more, I have made a prediction. Donald Trump will win the 2020 national presidential election. Based on other available data, I predict the opposing side will not accept the election results. Protests will continue. Protests will intensify and increase in major cities. The protests will turn violent quickly. Riots, looting, civil unrest, food shortages and more turmoil will take place. This will take place directly after the election. That unrest will continue for at least several months, but may go on for some time. There will be violence, danger to peaceful citizens, and civil unrest for quite some time.
And there we have it. I guess we have the prediction for the presidential election. So
that sounds fucking that sounds pretty sad.
yeah, it's a pretty somber prediction. And then you know, I wasn't prepared for what she spit out. But then I said, I'm gonna just let it go. This is what she said, and we'll see what happens or how accurate. I can't wait to see how accurate. If she's accurate, that would truly be something. And
yeah, but do you really want her to be accurate though? I mean, given what she said?
No, I really don't wish for any kind of violence or civil unrest. I hope things calm down a lot after the election personally. And I hope that they do. But one of the things that we have to, I guess, be aware of with this WebBot X is that it's going on the internet and looking at all the data that it can. And through predictive language and some other things, and what are people talking about? So maybe it might be just picking up on fear out there in the internet consciousness or collective consciousness that people are saying these things, talking about these things over and over again, and it's finding that over and over again. And it works on a weighted scale, sort of the way that it collates the data that it collects and then makes a decision or a prediction. It's interesting. And it's going to be interesting to see how accurate it is.
Well, like I said, hopefully that stuff doesn't happen, because if it does, there's going to be a lot more episodes of Truthseekers from the Apocalypse Cabin. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think I do kind of find, I do agree with that almost a little bit. I hate to say that. Like, I do feel like if Trump does win, and I mean, I guess this would go for Biden too, but I almost feel like it's more if Trump ends up winning, I think you're probably going to see, at least for a short period of time after the election, you're going to see some increased, violent activity or rioting, whatever you want to call it, and it's going to be in a lot of major cities. I mean, that's where it seems to be focused mostly. I mean, we don't see people. Well, we did see sort of a lot of violence out in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. In my state, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, for those that don't know, is like, it's Amish country. It's like where mostly Amish people live. Not mostly, but a great population of Amish people live. It's farm country. It's not a place that you'd expect Black Lives Matter riots or anything like that. But there's this huge amount of violence that's breaking out now. I guess it might be spilling out from the cities into more rural areas, Yeah, but I think what you're seeing, and I mean, you could probably say the same thing with Lancaster, is that when it's in the major cities, you see a lot of looting, and there's a lot of, it's really more, the Antifa types that are doing this. And then when you get out into like the suburbs, and I guess even out into like the country, you get these, these small pockets of BLM or Antifa type groups that go out there, and these, as we would say here in Ohio, these good old boys that are out there in the country, like, they don't necessarily subscribe to the same belief system that some of these other people do, and they don't put up with a lot of that stuff out there. So I think it's scattered in suburb, like rural areas, but definitely nowhere near the levels that you're seeing in a lot of these major cities.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the live chat, and Kel Truth is once again having streaming issues. Yeah, so oh wow, somebody said Carrie Silveri is here and says Ohio has the biggest Amish population now. We've overtaken PA. And Carrie says Dan's in Ohio. I am too. Yeah, well, that's interesting. I did not know there was any Amish people in Ohio.
They're actually more like in the middle of the state, or kind of like, well, they're in the middle of the state, like north of Columbus or like northeast of Columbus, And then I think in the southeast part of the state too, there's there's some larger like Mennonite or actual Amish communities that are scattered around that area.
Oh, excellent. We'll take some comments. I spoke with their state rep the other day. He said our government is in a hell of a handmask. I had to laugh, but agree. Yeah, I think everybody's kind of waiting on pins and needles for this stupid election to be over to see what's going to happen next. I'm kind of more hopeful though about the whole pandemic issues because it seems like there's major breakthroughs being done, and a vaccine may be on its way. But of course, that's going to open a whole can of worms in conspiracy land because this is a pretty quick vaccine, and a lot of people are not going to believe that it's safe.
Well,
So,
I think the conspiracy land guy in me says that no matter who wins the election, I think the COVID thing is going to start to, in my opinion, is going to start to sort of die off in the news. That's kind of what I think about it.
oh, you think the COVID thing will be dying off in the news? Why is that?
Well, I mean, I think that, and again, this is all just based on like your personal opinion of, how severe, the COVID pandemic you think it really is. But I mean, based on, data that's come out now that we've been in this for several months now, I think, and again, I'm not trying to say that one life is not important or that, one death in general is not a huge deal. But I think when you look at how they were taking it in the beginning, and then you look at the sort of longer time that we've been dealing with this, it doesn't quite seem like this, apocalyptic plague that a lot of people were sort of talking about it that way, in the beginning. There's obviously groups that I think are more susceptible to it, like the elderly population or people who are immunocompromised or have some, pre-existing, ailments.
Sure.
But I just, like I said, I think that, I hate to say that, and I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me, but I think some of it is, hyped up in the media on both sides. And again, I think whether it's Trump that wins or whether it's Biden that wins, I think that we're gonna sort of pivot from that to whatever the next thing is. And maybe it's the rioting, maybe it's, they go back to the way things somewhat were before, and there's just nonstop, partisan bickering in Washington for the next 4 years or whatever.
Yeah,
but
the status quo, what we're used to. Yeah, just go back to the old bullshit instead of this new bullshit. Yeah, and a lot of people, I don't know what to think about the whole pandemic, but I am probably just cautious, just in case, for the sake of my family. Like I've gone nowhere for 7 months. I go to the gas station and I go to Home Depot or Lowe's to get materials for the cabin, and I have this whole procedure. Like before I go in, I sanitize my hands, right, so that there's a little bit of hand sanitizer on my hands on that door handle I might touch. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as I get in my car, I'm with the hand sanitizer again. And then when I get home, I wash my hands up to my elbows like a doctor. I have this whole, and I got to do it. It's like almost like an OCD compulsion with me, just in case, because if I get it, I want to know, look, I did what I'm supposed to do. I wear a mask everywhere I go outside. If I go, and I'm doing the hand sanitizer, I'm washing my hands. I'm doing everything that I can do. And again, with our family, the same thing. Like, my son just started school a few weeks ago, and because he's special needs, they decided that, and rightfully so, a special needs child is not going to sit in front of a computer for 8 hours. He's just not going to do it. Well, depending on the special need, but in my son's case, he's pretty, he's nonverbal autistic, so he's not going to sit there. So he's going to school. And, as soon as he comes home, I'm like washing his hands, and I'm very concerned because we made it 6 months and nobody in my family got sick. And I was afraid to change that one variable, which would be my son going somewhere every day, because, I trust that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and whatever, but you never know. He could pick that up anywhere, bring it home to all of us.
I have some, I guess, like where part of my, issue comes in with it is like with a lot of these guidelines, and I know it's different like state by state, but I mean, just to kind of give you a picture of like, what I was kind of dealing with is like when this all started, my job was considered essential. So I was going to work every day. I was going to the grocery store. I was doing all these things. And at the time, nobody in my office was wearing a mask. It wasn't anything that they were talking about. It was not, it was just if you got to be out and you're essential, you go. And if not, we need you to stay inside. Okay.
Well,
fine.
basically, though, it's pretty clear now that the government basically lied to us about the masks so that the essential workers would have them.
That was kind of the story that that came out, was that they were trying to keep that, the amount of masks that they had, they were trying to keep them for the hospital workers and first responders. But like we went this whole 3 or 4 month time frame, whether they were lying or not, saying, oh, you don't need the mask. So we weren't wearing them. And then all of a sudden, here in Ohio, it was like, now you got to wear a mask inside. Well, I've been going to work for the last 4 months and I wasn't wearing a mask. Or you can go to a restaurant, you got to walk into the restaurant wearing the mask, but as soon as you sit down, you can take the mask off. And I'm sitting, 6, 7, whatever the distance is away from somebody else.
Yeah, it gets stranger. Here by the cabin, there's a local tavern. It's like a restaurant and bar, big bar, lovely place. Reminds me of like old Irish bars when I was a kid. But they have this weird thing there where like, yeah, you got to wear the mask when you go in. And then in between the bar stools, they have plastic. Do you know what I mean? And they took away, I think, every other bar stool that used to be there. There used to be twice as many. So there's a little more space, and there's these plastic sheets, and you can go and you can drink at the bar, do whatever you're going to do. But like, if you get up to go to the bathroom, you got to put the mask back on while you're walking around the bar to the bathroom. And I thought that was so bizarre, but that's what they're making you do. And, I go there and get a 12-pack. Sometimes I don't really sit at the bar, but I observed this while I was waiting to pay for my beer, and I was like, "This is crazy." And they have these plastic sheets, and the other thing is that I think it's really selective. I've noticed, like up here in the country, they don't give a shit about the government guidelines. Like, I don't want to get anybody in trouble, so forget the restaurant that I mentioned. But up here, it's supposed to be 25% capacity of the restaurant. Up here, you walk in a restaurant and every table is filled. People are waiting out. People are waiting at the bar or whatever to get a table. They don't care. And it seems to me like this is pretty common in more rural areas, that they're just going, fuck you. We have a business to run. We have a life to lead here, and we're not going to go by this. But meanwhile, where I live in the suburbs, you can tell if you walk into a restaurant that they're very limited, like there'll be like one table with people and 3 around it with no people,
Well, there's I have a bar story. Like when I used to live up north of Columbus for several years. So I have some friends that are still up there. So I'll go up there every once in a while to visit. And there's a bar that I always like to go to when I'm up there. And it's in a smaller setting. It's a pretty tight area. So there's a main bar, and then there's some tables kind of scattered on the backside. So for the tables, they put up like shower curtains between each table. But when you're sitting at the bar, though, this is the funny part. So you're at the bar and there's like 10 bar stools, and on the bar itself, they installed this like these plexiglass panels. Like, so you got two bar stools and then a plexiglass and then 2 bar stools. But the thing is, the plexiglass is only on the bar. So like if I'm sitting in the stool, I could be sitting right next to the guy who's next to me, and there's no plexiglass. So
you got to be leaning over. Yeah.
What's the point of the plexiglass if it's not going to be basically cutting me off from the person who could literally be sitting not 6 feet away, probably more like 1.5 feet, 2 feet away, and there's no barrier there. So it's like you said.
I don't even know how effective any of this shit is, or like who decided you got to put plastic between bar stools. But I guess they want to get as many bar stools filled as possible, and they don't want to put 6 feet between them, so they're putting this plastic up. I don't know. None of this makes any fucking sense. It's like people are making up shit as they go, and
like you said, I think it almost varies state by state, and not to bring politics into it, but it does seem like, and I guess maybe the more red states, in the more conservative areas, the restrictions that they're following are a little less. They're not being as strict about it as maybe in your more urban, like major city, where it's kind of a more, I guess maybe liberal sort of leaning. They take that stuff a lot more seriously there. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
and here there's even a few stores and things and a gas station nearby that has a big sign up like, no, you don't need a fucking mask to come here. And they're saying, no, you don't need a fucking, they printed it out like, no, you don't need a fucking mask. And they're like proud of this, I guess. And they're sort of anti-authoritarianism as far as this whole lockdown has been going on. And the other thing here is, I know from my neighbors that like a lot of them are like, we have to eat. We're just going to go to work. And even way before the quarantine ended officially, they were just working, you know, they were just doing what they got to do to feed their families. And they don't give a shit about what the government is telling them.
I mean, I'm curious to see how the school year goes. Cause I mean, I've got two stepkids that are older that are in school, and their school district decided to go, you know, all 5 days, you know, no hybrid. They had the option of like a virtual deal, but you know, they decided that they wanted them to be in school 5 days, my girlfriend and, you know, and her ex-husband. So they went, and, you know, I'm just curious to see if they're going to be able to make it for a whole semester or the whole year without there being shutdowns and all these different
things. If there's
things.
an outbreak, they may shut it down. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, I don't know. We're living in wild times.
Yeah, well, we've been like 2 weeks now of school, so maybe in like another week or two, we'll know if they're going to continue for a while or if they're going to shut it down, because it takes a few weeks for the thing to spread and people to start having symptoms and getting sick, I guess.
Well, it sounds like from what I've read in their policy, the initial sort of guideline to this is if a student tests positive, that student has to quarantine. And then depending on if that student was like interacting with a teacher or other kids, they may ask that teacher or those other students to quarantine too, but they're not doing like this mass shutdown of the school. But what happens when 20 kids or 30 kids or 50 kids, you know, test positive for COVID? Are they still not going to shut the whole thing down? Or, you know, are they going to follow that guideline?
Are they going to be sending everybody for 3 kids a class, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's hard on the kids too. I mean, like you said, you've got a son that's, you know, got some special needs, and there's a lot of other parents that deal with that same thing. Even if your kid doesn't have special needs, there's just a lot of kids who, you know, they can't concentrate for more than 5 minutes, or they're just, you know, they can't sit at a computer.
What about people? I wonder, like, I hear stories from my wife because, you know, she knows a lot of moms, and she was like, so-and-so's got 4 kids. And how the hell is she supposed to take care of 4 kids all day long and make sure they're staying on this laptop and doing what they're supposed to do? And it's very stressful on the parents. And the other issue is that, you know, people are paying like ridiculous amounts of school taxes. We pay like, I don't know what it is, but like thousands of dollars a year. I didn't pay for an online program, you know. Part of school is also daycare, whether people would like to admit it or not. You got to work. Your kid needs to be someplace. You're paying all that school tax so that you have a good place to send your kid during the day while you're making a living. And that's been taken away from a lot of people, and that's sad.
I think I've even heard too that with some of these school districts that are doing like the all online school, that they've actually contracted with these companies that like specialize in virtual learning. So like the teachers that are getting a salary from the school district, they're not doing anything.
No,
it's these, you know, these like virtual teachers, you know, in an office somewhere that work for this company are the ones that are setting up the lesson plans and actually like, you know, doing these learning activities with these kids. So where you're like you said, where are all your property taxes and all that money that you're paying for school district taxes? Like, are we going to get any of that money back?
No, of course not.
So.
And then in my school, in my area, there was this whole big hubbub because some teachers were taking an FMLA leave. In other words, they were saying, you know, they have to take care of family or whatever. So they get a leave of absence and they keep their job. And then a few of them got caught doing like daycares, or they were trying to set up a daycare from their home while they were on family medical leave. So there was a big thing about that. I don't know what the answer is, but like all this is new to everybody. I don't know what's going to happen with this. But I don't think that it's healthy for kids to sit in front of a laptop for 8 hours a day. They need in-person learning.
Well, I think that's just a human thing in general. I think most humans probably crave some kind of person-to-person interaction. So, I mean, like you said, when you're sitting in front of a computer and you're not getting to spend time with your friends and you're not going to school, and I mean, if you're sitting in your house and you got your video games and your books and your toys and all this stuff that these kids have that they,
yeah, it's quite a distraction.
How are you supposed to get these kids to actually focus on learning when they've got all their, all their gear and their accessories like sitting right next to them,
Yeah, I saw one of my friends too. It was funny. Posted her son's staying home all day, and he's like maybe 10, and she posted like first day of school. Get upstairs with your laptop. Come and visit me at noon. Love the lunch lady. Like I guess for the older kids it's a little easier, but I don't know. Yeah. So I think that though I'm hopeful that there's these new therapies that are being discovered and coming out, and that the vaccine is right around the corner. But that's going to be a whole can of worms, because I think they're going to make the vaccine mandatory for kids to return to school. I think they're going to make the vaccine mandatory for people to do, it's going to be an issue. It's going to be an issue with, they're going to make people take it, and if you don't,
are you going to be the first person standing in line?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel very torn about this, because I really am fearful of this virus, but I'm equally fearful of a rushed inoculation that hasn't been really tested for years like they normally do. This whole warp speed thing is a little scary. You're not cutting years off of the development time of a vaccine without cutting some corners. And that is concerning to me.
You're also apparently cutting the liability from the pharmaceutical companies. And they're basically saying, like, if you end up getting injured from this, or if you end up, I guess, dying from this vaccine, like, we're not responsible for damages you're not going to take us to court. That's not happening. So I don't know. It's like I said, I wouldn't want to be the first person standing in line to get that vaccine.
Yeah, and Out of Mind says don't get the shot. So Out of Mind, you're not going to take the shot? And somebody else, elderberry, semiscus, and dandelion root really help the immune system. Oh, that's also Out of Mind. Yeah, I like elderberry syrup when I'm sick.
Don't forget about Cliff High's Chaga Gangster Protocol. I was a big fan of those videos, like before he got I guess like blacklisted from YouTube, and they
and listen, I didn't really pay attention that he was pushing that, but I have Chaga tea, and I've been taking vitamin C and D because the D I'm taking because it appears that, and again, I'm not a medical person, don't take medical advice from me, but this is a statement of fact, really, that most people that are having a terminal effect from dealing with this virus are severely vitamin D deficient. So it couldn't hurt to take some vitamin D supplements just in case, right?
Well, I remember in the beginning when he was making those videos, and he was talking about the chaga and the vitamin C, and like the I think he talked about elderberry a little bit, but the chaga was the main thing. And that actually, I mean, I had heard about chaga before all that, but that sort of got me, doing some research. And I mean, really, like you said, I have chaga. I actually have chaga powder, but I don't use it that often. I actually have the chaga extract in the bottle, and I use it twice a day in my coffee. And I mean, you know what, if it doesn't do what he says it does, then, I guess it's no biggie. But I mean, just from some of the small amount of research I've been able to find on it, it sounds like chaga is actually one of the few, I guess, medicinal mushrooms that's actually been somewhat heavily studied in labs as far as like what positive effects you might get from it. And I mean, some of it, I don't know if it's really necessarily backed by multiple studies, but I mean, just some of the preliminary stuff sounds like it may have some health benefit.
Yeah, Vanessa Thor mentions she just had blood work, and my vitamin D and B were excellent. Good for you. Yeah, I think that supplements and chaga can't hurt. I have the tea. I was taking it for a while when this started. I would take 1 cup of chaga tea with the chaga. I got the kind in the tea bags. Some people get it whole and you mix it, or I don't know. I just thought the tea bags were most convenient. Not exactly delicious, but you can get it down.
It's sort of bland. It's sort of bland.
The tea that I got is I put a little bit of honey or sugar in it to get it down, and then it's fine. And when this started, I was doing that every day. I still have the tea. I haven't been doing it, and I kind of slacked off on the vitamins, so I got to start doing that. And I think the chaga tea can't hurt, right? Yeah.
I think it's
Vanessa Thor. I agree with you. I'm trying to switch to damn vapes, Vanessa Thor. Trying. And Jonaside says smoking what? Carol Utley, supplements are important. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's going back to the supplement thing. I think that's almost like a generational thing, because I feel like back in the day, I can remember like, my grandparents or like, even my parents like taking vitamins and stuff, and I'm like, what are you taking these vitamins for? And then it's like I feel like my generation of people, that was really not something I think that was like talked about or really pushed on us. And I mean, most people I know that are my age don't take any kind of supplementation at all.
Yeah.
So I've really, like I'm kind of like what you said. I've been really getting into like looking more into that stuff. And like I said, I do the chaga, I do the vitamin C, vitamin D. But I've been really big on the chaga here lately. I actually do. I don't mind it because, like I said, I just put it in coffee and you can't even really taste it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And Vanessa Thorne mentions, I live and love Quick Defense by Gaia Herbs. It's the only thing I swear by as a preventative. I've never heard of that. I'm going to look it up. You know what's interesting, though? I will say this. This whole pandemic and the lockdown thing really started for me about March. And that's 7 months. I have not gotten sick, period, for 7 months. And usually, especially with 2 kids, I would get 3 or 4 colds in that time period, or a cold and a stomach virus or a flu or something. Probably 3-4 times. It's like every month I would get sick before. And since this started, I haven't gotten sick. And I don't know if it's the supplements, if it's all the hand washing and hand sanitizing, but I'm thankful for that. I haven't even gotten a cold in 7 months. And that's crazy for me. Normally, if there's any germ around, I pick it up and I get it.
I mean, if you haven't been out much either and haven't been interacting,
yeah, that's another thing.
That's probably got a lot to do with it too.
I have used this as an excuse to become even more of a hermit than I usually am. I'm just not ask my wife. I drive her crazy because I'm like, yeah, I don't want to go nowhere. I don't want to do nothing. I got a really nice house. I'm getting my money's worth,
That's right. Hey, I was going to actually, when we were talking about Oracle earlier before you played the video, I was going to ask you this because I was watching, I didn't get to watch the show live last night, but I was watching the replay this morning. And I think you had made a comment when you were talking about Oracle about like, you thought there was going to be a day soon in the future, like where you were talking about like AI gods or like a religion sort of based around, artificial intelligence. I don't know if maybe I saw Terminator too many times as a kid, but my sort of thought process on AI has always been that human beings are not adult enough to handle the ramifications of artificial intelligence. I think even people who go at it with like the most, who have like the, who don't have ill intentions with it. Like, I just feel like at some point down the road, it's going to go that way. So, do you feel like, the future of AI is really a big positive for humanity, or do you feel like it's going to cause us some issues?
I'm a 50-50. Here's what I think. I think that given what I know about human nature, any technological advance that's ever been made, people weaponized. Right?
Yep.
We can say that with some degree of certainty. We learned to split the atom, and we could have provided free power for everybody in the world, including the third world, where they didn't even have electricity at the time that we discovered that some countries barely had electricity. We could have done wonders with that ability to split the atom. Everybody in the world could have had power in the form of a nuclear power plant. What do we do with it instead? We turned it into Earth's greatest weapon. Yeah, we blew a lot of people up with it, and that was even in its crude first forms. So what worries me is that it's going to be a tremendous technological advantage, and I don't feel confident enough in human nature to say that it wouldn't be weaponized.
Yep.
So I'm not sure what the answer is, but the flip side of the coin is that once that singularity is reached, it will be a very short time where it will go from human level intelligence to a quantum leap ahead of human level intelligence, and be doing things like curing cancer, curing AIDS, curing autism, preventing, curing diabetes, all of these things that have eluded man's ability because we only have so much time, research money, ability, right? But these AIs are going to become a step above us as far as intelligence. They may think in different ways that we haven't even imagined thinking about diseases or whatever. I think there's going to be a golden age of AI when it first begins, that there's going to be mostly only benefit from these AI. But eventually there's going to be problems. People are going to weaponize them. That's how I think it's going to go.
Well, I mean, just from what the small amount of material that I've read, as far as like the quantum computing and like what these supercomputers can do now, and then I guess they can, link together and all these different things that they're talking about. As far as you said, there's probably going to be a day, and it's probably, sooner than we think it is, where, the capacity of a computer is going to be far and above anything that any human alive could be able to do, on their own. So
we're already starting to see it in the form of some very narrow and specific AIs. Like people don't even understand this, but hospitals now are using AIs to like look at mammograms and things like that. And they can look through hundreds of them in the time that it takes a human radiologist to look at 3. They can look at 300 in the time that it takes a human radiologist to look at 3. And the accuracy with which they flag things for the humans to look at is near 100%.
Yeah, it's a lot higher than they said. But I remember seeing something about that where they were looking at cancer in like MRIs or mammograms or something, and they said that the AI system was able to detect more, I guess, like you said, red flags or like cancer type cells than the human radiologist was, who was actually looking at the same data.
Yeah, so there's already AIs that are better at humans at certain tasks. The difference is there's a concept called a strong AI. So in other words, we've already developed these AIs that have these very, very narrow set of expert skills. But the strong AI will be good like that at everything. And that is what is the tremendous challenge of computer scientists, is to create that. And there's all different methods. People think it could be quantum computing. Other people think, no, it's neural networks. You design a neural network that operates like a human brain, and then you train it and teach it. And the research goes on.
Well, I think, what's Elon Musk doing now? He's like putting
the neural link
computer chips and
that's scary. Let's have a direct link to the internet. And this whole transhumanism thing brings up a whole lot of philosophical problems, because let's just say, for example, that Elon Musk's neural link starts to really take off and work really well. And let's say that anybody that has that neural link can connect to the internet. They will have the whole of human knowledge at their fingertips. Whenever they need an answer to a question, boom, it's right there in your brain, right? Now, what if you were going for some job and you were going against somebody that has the neural link? The superhuman abilities that guy has that you don't have is a problem. And again, if we look at human nature, I think what's going to happen is that the haves and the have-nots are going to become further and further apart. Because if you don't have the money to get this upgrade, what are you going to do? And you're not going to be able to compete with people that have that upgrade. So then we're going to have 2 classes of people. Really, truly, the haves and the have-nots. We're going to have the people that have the neural link, and that could be a tremendous joining of computer intelligence and human intelligence, and the people that are stuck in the Stone Age with just their paltry organic brain and not having that advantage. It's going to be a problem.
Yeah, but think about it like this though. Like right now in 2020, with the cell phone that's in your pocket, you have access to more information than any humans in any point in our current civilization has ever had. So like we have all this information right now, and what do people decide to do with it? They're making TikTok videos and spending time
porn.
Like
Do you know how much
porn.
Do you know how much of the internet bandwidth is taken up by porn? I read several statistics that it's more than 30, maybe as much as 50% of the internet bandwidth around the world. What people are viewing, watching, consuming is porn or porn related. That's crazy. We have the world's greatest, most tremendous communications tool that humans have ever invented. And what do we do with it? Porn and kitten videos, You can't forget the kitten videos.
So I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think we as humans right now, without the neural network, already have access to all of this knowledge. And most of us, I think, choose to, like you said, we fill our time with with other activities. So I don't know how that's going to go.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting time to be alive for sure. An interesting time to be alive. We may see, you and I, Dan Hogan, may live to see the singularity. We probably will. I'm betting that we're going to live to see the singularity happen. We may also live to see humans merge with that artificial intelligence in the form of something like Neuralink. That might be within our lifetime. And what a tremendous change for the human race both of those things is going to be. It's going to be a crazy ride.
What did they say with singularity? Like, I remember seeing something a while back where they were predicting like 2040 or 2035, or was going to be sort of the year of singularity?
I'm betting on 2040 or sooner. And the singularity is basically that point in which an AI system is, first of all, indistinguishable from a human as far as something like a Turing test. In other words, if they put somebody in front of it that didn't know it was an AI and that person was allowed to interview the AI, would the person be able to detect that it was an AI or not? Or would they believe it was a human? That's one of the criteria that people often cite. But generally, the singularity is described as that moment that an artificial intelligence becomes as intelligent as a human. So we're not far off. We're really not going to be far off. I don't believe that we are. I'd be surprised if it takes till 2040. I think that Google, look at the tremendous money that they have. They're putting all chips in on AI, and we're running on, and AI is monitoring us right now. People don't realize that we're on YouTube, and AI runs most of YouTube, or different AIs run most of YouTube. It's coming, friends. This singularity is coming. Whether it will be good or bad remains to be seen, but it's coming.
I think that there's definitely going to be some negative to that too. I mean, just look at right now where you're really starting to see this whole deal with deep fake videos where they can basically they can take a clip from somebody and then make that clip say something totally different than what was said. And I mean, the mouth is moving just like, they're actually saying. I mean,
those deep fakes are scary.
Where is that going to go?
Somebody did a deep fake of Richard Nixon reading the speech that would have been read if the
I saw that.
If the astronauts weren't able to get off the moon and they were going to die there. And that was creepy, realistic. It looked absolutely like him. It sounded absolutely like him. And you just get a body double, slap on Nixon's face and some clever computer work, and it looks exactly like Nixon. It's crazy.
And then I think going back to what you said, where you were talking about, here at some point with, humans merging with machine, and then the philosophical questions I think that are going to arise from that, as far as if that happens, then you could talk about humans living to be 150, 200 years old or something like that. And then everything that sort of comes from that, and then curing all of these, the plus side is you cure all these diseases, but then if more people are alive on the earth, that's using more resources and this, and this. And then how does that affect the earth going forward? How does that affect all of our...
we're already overpopulated. Imagine if there was no disease and we all lived to be 300. But that may force us to colonize space, We may have to go elsewhere.
Or they're going to have to get more serious about renewable resources and, get off of oil, and you get more, I don't know if it's solar, hydrogen, nuclear, whatever it is. I mean, there's all kinds of other options out there that have never been, produced on a mass scale, because the current kind of global system is based around oil right now, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. 1984 is becoming a reality. Yeah, I didn't know when I read 1984 back in the day that it was a documentary. I thought it was like a fiction. I didn't know it was like, maybe it's a survival guide for what you're going to live through soon. I don't know. But yeah, all this stuff is funny, and I'm a little concerned about all this stuff that's going on with the internet now, and internet censorship, and the way things are clamped down. And I don't know, I'm 50-50 on that too, because part of me thinks these are private companies. They could do whatever they want. But the other part of me thinks you shouldn't give any private company that much power, because if somebody's like, let's say, for example, somebody's deplatformed, whether you agree or disagree with what they were talking about, if you take away their Twitter, their YouTube, their Facebook, their Instagram, then they don't have a voice in the world. that other people have, you know, and that's a big problem.
I think when you look at it from maybe sort of a libertarian, I guess, point of view, it's like what you just said. I mean, these are private companies. They have terms of service. They have, you know, rules that you have to follow. And if they don't agree with what you're putting out there, I mean, I guess they are in their right to do that. I mean, when you take away a whole viewpoint, then all you're doing is basically just, you know, everybody that's still on there is all just what's the term? I can't think of it, but it's like everybody just collectively thinking the same thing. Nobody's challenging any ideas.
It becomes an echo chamber,
like groupthink, where everybody's just
chamber,
all of the same thing, and that's where a lot of this is right now. I mean, you know, I don't, you know, if these people really wanted to, they could start another social media service that was just all for conservatives or all for liberals or for whatever group you want to be.
Yeah, I'm really surprised somebody hasn't.
Well, I think they have, but it's just not been able to catch on, you know, globally like a Twitter or a Facebook. But yeah, I don't know. The censorship thing is definitely a big deal. I think what you said as far as deplatforming people, and you're seeing a lot of that now, especially in the whole, you know, new age sort of UFO community, where a lot of these guys are getting taken off their platforms. And it's like, I mean, you know, if you want to give somebody your money and and you believe whatever they're selling, I mean, that's your viewpoint. Now, if that person is, you know, going out there saying, oh, this product right here cures COVID, and then people take it and they poison themselves and they die, that's probably a little different. I would look at that maybe a little bit different, as if somebody's out there talking about blue chickens and space jumping to Mars and all that stuff. Like that's a whole different thing to me. But
yeah, I think these are complex problems, and I'm just a stupid monkey. So mostly I try to stay out of it. But once in a while I think about these things because, you know, one of the things that worries me is, like, you know, that saying, like with the Nazis, you know, when they came for the Jews, I did nothing because I wasn't Jewish. And next they came for me. You know, do we just go, well, they violated the terms of service? Part of me, though, does see some of them being stupid and going like, you knew you weren't supposed to say this. And we have people like Kerry Cassidy's really pushing the envelope. Like, they demonetize her platform, and then she has that whack job from Plandemic on her show right after they demonetized her. That's basically going, fuck you, YouTube. You know, like, she's going to deserve whatever happens to her. And a lot of people think that her channel is going to be gone next. She's going to be one of the next.
You got Jordan Sather out there, and he's pushing like the whole MMS, miracle cure all. And, you know, you see these articles all the time. I saw one the other day where it was like some guy had taken some form of, you know, I can't even think of the name of it, but that particular compound, MMS, or some, you know, the sort of raw form of it.
Miracle mineral solution.
Yeah. And something chlorine dioxide, whatever it is. You know, this guy took it and he ended up getting sick and he died, you know, and I'm sure that he probably heard that. I'm not saying he heard it on his channel, but he probably heard somebody
So, yeah,
you know, he heard that from somebody. So I don't know.
Well, I appreciate that you took the time to come and hang out with us tonight here at the Apocalypse Cabin. It's been a fun night. We're gonna wrap things up here, friends, and tomorrow I think we'll be doing another show if all pans out. I kind of committed that we're going to do 4 shows a week. I'm here at the cabin early to try to get this stupid sunroom built, and things are going pretty good with that. And I'm here until Sunday, so I'm hoping for tremendous progress on that thing. But you never know here. Like, I could go out there tomorrow and all the tools break down and nothing works right, and I don't have the materials I need, and it takes 2 hours to go get them, and we'll see what happens. We'll definitely see what happens. But we'll have to have you come back once you scour through your supply of EVPs and try to find us some more dead people talking, because that was an interesting show, and I'd like to do that again, right?
Maybe I can go back and get some, like I said, or maybe if I get some time here, I can, go do a couple more investigations and maybe come up with some newer material. But right now it's basically just, taking care of the kid and just dealing with having the new baby.
I hear you, man.
I have been able to do some sort of, I guess, like side research on some of the missing 411 stuff. I've really gotten into that here lately. So I've really been sort of looking into that right now. But before I go, inquiring minds want to know, when are you planning on doing the final episode on the curious case of Sarah Adams? Any idea when that might be hitting?
Like I've given her like 6 opportunities to do the interview, and this is what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna message her one more time, and if she doesn't commit to something, then I'm just gonna run with what I have, and she can respond to it if she wants to, or she's not gonna respond to it, because I don't know. She told me that she was deathly sick, and then she was taking all these glam selfies of herself the same day. And like, I don't know what's going on. And now she's doing conferences, and I just saw her do somebody else's show, but it was one of those shows where they just let her talk. They don't challenge anything she says. They don't ask her any hard questions. It's softball. So if she could do the softballs, she could do our show. And we're going to be nice and respectful to her. So I don't know what the issue is there, but I kind of think that she knows that, I'm going to push her and challenge her on a lot of her claims, and I don't think she wants to get into it. I think she wants to backpedal now, and
I think you can do that respectfully, and
sure,
you can do that in a mature way and have that conversation at the same time, not giving her a pass either. I mean, I think me and you were sort of talking about this on Twitter a little bit, but it's like, if she really is what she says she is, she should be willing to step up and face the criticism, and maybe people who believe in her, they're not going to give a shit like what she says. Or
no,
what
I don't think they're going to give a shit. I don't think they're going to
give
a shit what I say. Yeah, I don't think they're going to give a shit what I say. So, an Invisible Hand says the black goo huckster, one-time black goo huckster. Now she's on to, other superpowers. So, and Deviated is late to the party. Late to the party. Well, friends, it's been a long day for me. We are going to wrap things up here. It's always nice to talk to Dan Hogan, and we'll see you guys again soon, right?
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, let's play us out here. All right, friends. Until next time, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night, and God bless you all.